My girlfriend said I embarrass her because I'm just a mechanic. So I've been with Sophie for almost 3 years, and honestly, I thought everything was going great. She works in marketing for this high-end cosmetics company, always dressed perfect, knows how to work a room. Me, I'm a diesel mechanic. I work on heavy trucks, semis, construction equipment. It's good money, but yeah, I come home with grease under my fingernails and my work clothes are never going to be clean again. Here's the thing though, I actually love what I do. There's something satisfying about diagnosing a problem that 3 other shops couldn't figure out, or rebuilding an engine from scratch. My dad taught me to work on engines when I was a kid, and it just stuck. I'm good at it. But apparently Sophie has been having issues with my career choice for a while now, and I just found out how deep it goes. Last week, we were at this coffee shop near her office. Nice place, you know, the type, exposed brick, pour over coffee for $8, everyone on MacBooks. Sophie's friend Jess showed up with her husband. They were planning this networking event next month, some charity thing where everyone dresses up and pretends to care about whatever cause while really just making business connections. Jess was going on about it, and then she turned to Sophie and said, "You and Desmond should definitely come. It'll be fun, and Sophie, you can introduce Desmond to some of my husband's colleagues." I saw Sophie's face change. Just for a second, but I caught it. Then she did this fake laugh and said, "Oh, we'll have to see about our schedules." After they left, I asked her about it. Just casual, like, "Hey, that event sounds interesting, wanna go?" That's when she got quiet for a minute. Then she looked at me and said, "Desmond, I need to be honest with you. I don't think that's a good idea." I asked why not, and that's when it all came out. She said, and I'm trying to remember her exact words here, "These are successful people, Desmond. They're executives and entrepreneurs, and you fix trucks." I was stunned, completely taken aback. I just sat there, didn't know what to say. She must have taken my silence as her cue to keep going. "You just don't fit in at this kind of event. You don't talk about the same things they talk about. You don't get their references." And honestly, it makes me look bad, like I settled, like I couldn't do better. Then she said the thing that really got me. "You might be great with engines, but at these upscale events, you're basically just the help. I need a partner who can walk into any room with me and hold his own, not someone who reminds everyone that I'm dating down. Showing up with you at events like that, it embarrasses me." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I sat there staring at her for what felt like hours, but probably just 30 seconds at best, trying to process what the hell my girlfriend just spat into my face. Then I said, "I understand," and we left. That was 5 days ago. She's been acting normal since then, like nothing happened. But I can't stop thinking about it. I've been looking at engagement rings and wedding venues, thinking about our future, and the whole time she's been embarrassed by what I do for a living. I love her, but I also love what I do, and I'm starting to realize she might not love all of me back. Update 1. Hey everyone. I'm back sooner than I expected because something happened last night that changed everything. I was planning to have a serious conversation with Sophie this weekend. I've been thinking about what I wanted to say, trying to figure out if this was fixable or if we needed to end things. But then yesterday afternoon, my sister Michelle called. Quick background. Michelle manages a luxury resort property up by the lake. It's been in my family for 2 generations. My grandfather built it, my dad expanded it, and now Michelle runs the day-to-day operations while I chose a different path. I'll explain more about that in a bit because it's relevant to what happened. Anyway, Michelle called to tell me about their annual summer gala happening this Saturday. It's this big charity fundraiser thing they do every year. Black tie, silent auction, the whole deal. She wanted to make sure I was coming because apparently some old family friends would be there and it was important. Here's where it gets interesting. I asked Michelle if I could bring Sophie. Michelle got quiet for a second, then said, "Of course. But Desmond, does Sophie know about the resort, about everything?" Well, actually, no. Sophie doesn't know. We've been together 3 years and I never told her about my family or the resort or any of it. Some of you might ask why I let her talk to me like that if I have money or whatever. This is why. When I was 25, I made a decision. I could have gone into the family business, worked at the resort, lived off the family name. Instead, I went to trade school. I wanted to prove I could make it on my own, build something with my own hands, not just coast on what my grandfather built. My dad didn't get it at first. We fought about it. But eventually he respected my choice. He said if I was going to do it right. Don't half-ass it by telling everyone about the resort and using it as a safety net. Really live the life I chose. So I did. I got my certifications, worked my way up from changing oil to rebuilding transmissions to running my own bay at the shop. I bought my own place with my own money from my own work. The truck I drive. I rebuilt the engine myself when it had 200K miles on it. Sophie knows I come from somewhere up north, knows my family has some property up there, but she's never asked for details and I never volunteered them. So, about the reason why I suddenly wanted Sophie to come with me to the gala. It was because after what she said at the coffee shop, I started wondering what she'd think if she knew. I told Michelle everything. My sister was quiet for a moment, then said simply, "Brother, I think it's time she meets the family. Properly." So Saturday night, Sophie and I are going to the gala. She thinks we're just going to a nice event as my sister's guests. She doesn't know that when we walk in, Michelle's going to introduce me as co-heir to the property. She doesn't know that Harold Bennett, the resort's CEO who will be there, is my dad's oldest friend and has known me since I was in diapers. She doesn't know that half the successful people in that room have watched me grow up. I know what some of you are thinking, this is petty, this is revenge, this is a setup, and maybe you're right, but part of me needs to see her reaction. Will she be happy, relieved, angry I didn't tell her? Or will she just be calculating how this changes things? I've been thinking about what my mom said when I told her I wanted to be a mechanic. She said, "The best way to know if someone loves you is to let them love you when you don't have anything to offer but yourself." For 3 years, Sophie has known me as just a mechanic. Now she's about to find out there's more to the story. The gala is tomorrow night. I'll update after. Update 2. I don't even know how to write this. The gala was tonight, and it was. I don't have words. We drove up yesterday afternoon. Sophie was excited. She bought a new dress, got her hair done, kept talking about how this would be a nice networking opportunity. She asked a few times how exactly I got invited to such an upscale event, and I just said Michelle had connections. When we pulled up to the resort, Sophie went quiet, like really quiet. She was staring out the window at the main lodge, the lake beyond it, the grounds. Finally she said, "This is your sister's resort. This is where she works." I said, "Yeah, this is the place." She asked how long Michelle had worked there, and I said since she graduated college. Didn't elaborate. Sophie just nodded and said, "She must be pretty high up to get us into this event." We checked into the suite Michelle had set aside for us. Sophie kept commenting on how nice everything was, how this must cost a fortune, how she couldn't believe Michelle could arrange this. I just let her talk. Here's where my stomach started doing flips. I got dressed in the tux I'd brought, and I could feel everything building up to this moment. We went down to the gala around 7. The ballroom was packed, probably 200 people, everyone dressed to the nines. Orchestra playing, champagne flowing, the whole 9 yards. Sophie grabbed my arm and whispered, "Okay, this is actually amazing. Try not to talk too much about work stuff, okay? Just follow my lead." That stung. Even now, even here, she was worried about me embarrassing her. Michelle found us almost immediately. She looked stunning, completely in her element. She hugged Sophie, then hugged me and whispered, "You ready for this?" I nodded. Ready as I'll ever be. Michelle said she wanted to introduce us to some people. We started working the room, and Sophie was in her element, smiling, laughing, making small talk. I could see her scanning name tags, trying to figure out who was important. Then Michelle steered us toward Harold Bennett. He's been CEO of the resort for 15 years, and he's basically been a second father to me and Michelle. When he saw me, his whole face lit up. "Desmond, there's my boy." He grabbed me in a hug, then held me at arm's length. "Look at you in a tux, not covered in engine grease for once." Sophie laughed, but it sounded nervous. She didn't understand why the CEO of this place was hugging me like family. Harold turned to the small group of people nearby, board members, investors, some local bigwigs. He said, loud enough for nearby conversations to pause, "Folks, I want you to meet someone special. This is Desmond Chandler. Some of you old-timers remember him running around this place as a kid. Desmond is one of the co-heirs to this property, along with his sister Michelle here." I swear to God, the room didn't go silent, obviously. This place was so freaking big, but the conversations near us definitely stopped. People turned to look. Sophie's hand on my arm went rigid. I felt her nails dig into my sleeve. I looked at her face and I will never forget the expression. Her mouth was slightly open, her eyes were wide, and she'd gone completely pale. Just frozen. One of the board members, an older woman named Patricia, who's known me since I was 10, said, "Oh, Desmond, it's so good to see you. How's the mechanic work going? Your father would be so proud that you stuck with it." Sophie made a sound, like a tiny strangled noise, still hadn't moved. Harold kept talking, telling some story about me as a kid taking apart the golf carts and putting them back together. People were laughing, asking me about my work, treating me like, well, like someone who belonged there, because I did belong there. I grew up there. I finally looked at Sophie directly. She was staring at me with this expression I'd never seen before. Shock, confusion, calculation, all of it happening at once on her face. Her lips started moving, but no sound came out at first. Then she managed to whisper, "What the hell, Desmond?" Michelle smoothly interjected, saying she needed to steal Sophie away to introduce her to some people, giving me a knowing look. Sophie went with her but kept looking back at me with this wild expression. For the next hour, I made my rounds. People kept coming up to me, old family friends, people I'd known my whole life. They asked about the shop, about my work, genuinely interested and impressed. Not because of the resort, but because I'd built something myself. And the whole time, across the room, I could see Sophie. Michelle had introduced her to some people, but Sophie kept watching me. I saw her pull Michelle aside at one point, saw them talking intensely. Michelle's expression stayed neutral, but I knew my sister. She was handling Sophie with professional politeness now, not warmth. Around 9 p.m., Sophie intercepted me near the bar. Her face was flushed, her eyes too bright. She grabbed my arm hard enough that I felt her nails through my jacket. "Desmond, what the hell?" People nearby glanced over. I could see a couple of Michelle's colleagues pretending not to listen while absolutely listening. I gently removed her hand from my arm. "Sophie, let's not do this here, not do this here." Her voice was getting louder. "You've been lying to me for 3 years, I'm your girlfriend, and you never thought to mention that you're freaking rich." More people were looking now. I saw Harold start to move toward us, but Michelle caught his arm, shook her head slightly. I kept my voice low. "I'm not rich. I work as a mechanic, that was my choice." "Your choice?" She actually laughed, but it was harsh and bitter. "Desmond, you could be running this place, living in a mansion, and instead you're in a garage covered in grease. Do you know what I could have done with this information? The connections, the opportunities. I've been introducing you as a mechanic. Do you have any idea how that made me look?" And there it was. Not "I wish you'd trusted me with this." Just how it made her look. I could feel every pair of eyes on us, but my gaze stayed locked on her. Then I said, clearly and calmly, "Sophie, I kept this from you because I wanted you to love me for who I chose to be, not for what my family has. And you just told me last week that you're embarrassed by who I chose to be." Her face went from red to pale in an instant. "You said I'm basically just the help at events like this. You said dating me makes you look like you settled. Remember, at the coffee shop?" Someone nearby gasped softly. I saw one of the board members look at Sophie with an expression that went from curious to disgusted. Sophie's eyes darted around, suddenly aware of the audience. She lowered her voice to an urgent whisper. "Desmond, please, can we talk about this privately?" "No." I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't whisper either. "You spent 3 years with me thinking being a mechanic, doing what I love, building a stable life on my own was an embarrassment. You refused to introduce me to your friends. And now, the second you find out my family owns this place, suddenly I'm worth your time. That's not, I didn't mean." Tears were starting, mascara beginning to run. "If I'd known, I never would have said those things. We can fix this." "That's exactly the problem, Sophie. You should have loved me when I was just a mechanic. That's who I am. I gestured around the ballroom, this is where I come from, but it's not who I chose to be. And you made it very clear that who I chose to be wasn't good enough for you. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She just stood there, tears streaming down her face, mascara running, looking at me like I was a stranger. The ballroom had gotten noticeably quieter. People weren't even pretending not to watch anymore. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, one of Michelle's cards for guest services. Call this number. They'll arrange a car service to take you home. Goodbye, Sophie. I turned and walked away. Didn't look back. I could hear Sophie calling my name behind me, her voice breaking, but I kept walking. As I passed Michelle, she touched my arm gently, a silent question in her eyes. I nodded, I'm okay. Then continued to walk straight through the ballroom toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear the murmur of conversations starting up again, people processing what they'd just witnessed. And somewhere in the middle of it all, Sophie, standing alone in her expensive dress, finally understanding what it felt like to be judged by a room full of people. I've been driving around for the past 2 hours. I ended up back at my apartment parking lot, but I can't go in. Sophie's been calling and texting nonstop. A lot of we need to talk and please don't do this and I'm sorry. But sorry can't fix this. Because she showed me exactly what she values. And it's not me, not really. It's what I can do for her image. I need to end this, once and for all. Edit, it's 3 a.m. and I finally went inside. Sophie hasn't come back, she isn't here, I guess she stayed at a friend's place. My phone has 43 missed calls and messages. I can't read them right now. Final update, hey everyone. It's been just over a week since the gala, and I wanted to give you all a final update since so many of you have been invested in this situation. First things first, Sophie and I are done. Officially, completely done. She moved her stuff out of my place 3 days ago. I'm not going to lie, this week has been absolutely brutal. But I also feel like I can breathe again, which is weird. Like I didn't realize how much tension I'd been carrying until it was gone. So here's what happened after that night. I barely slept that first night. Just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying everything. Sunday morning, Michelle called me. She wanted to check on me. I told her I was okay, which was a lie, but she didn't push. She asked if I wanted to come back up to the resort, just to get away and clear my head. So I drove back up Sunday afternoon, found myself sitting by the lake for hours just staring at the water. Michelle found me there around sunset. She sat with me for a while without saying anything, then finally said, "You did the right thing." I asked her what Sophie had said to her at the gala, and Michelle sighed. She said after Harold's introduction, Sophie had pulled her aside and asked why no one had told her about Desmond's real situation. Michelle said she'd responded that it wasn't anyone else's job to tell Sophie about my background. I would share what I wanted to share when I was ready. Sophie had apparently said something like, I could have been networking this whole time, and that's when Michelle knew everything I'd told her about Sophie was true. Michelle said, she didn't ask if you were okay keeping this secret or why you made the choices you made. She immediately started calculating how she could have used the information. That told me everything. We talked for hours. About Dad, about his philosophy on money and identity, about why I chose the path I did. Michelle said she'd always respected my choice, even when she didn't fully understand it. But now I get it, she said. You wanted to know who you were without all this, and you found out. You're someone who can rebuild an engine from scratch and take pride in honest work. That conversation helped more than I can say. When I got back to the city on Sunday night, Sophie was at my apartment waiting. She'd clearly been crying, her eyes were red and swollen. She said we needed to talk, really talk, without running away. So we talked. For hours. And here's what I learned. Sophie didn't grow up with money. Her family struggled. Her dad lost his job when she was in high school. They lost their house. She worked 3 jobs to get through college. By the time she graduated, she was determined to never feel that powerless again. She climbed the corporate ladder fast, made connections, built an image. And somewhere in there, she started believing that image was everything. She said she loved me, but she also admitted that she'd been hoping I'd level up, as she called it. Maybe get into management at the shop or start my own business, something that sounded more impressive when she talked about me to her friends. She said she felt like she was outgrowing me and it scared her. When I asked if learning about the resort changed how she felt, she was honest. Yes, because suddenly you made sense to me. Like this whole time I thought you were just someone who was content with mediocrity, and it drove me crazy. But now I understand you're someone who chose to step away from wealth, and that's actually impressive. But here's the thing, she was impressed by the choice now that she knew what I walked away from. She wasn't impressed by me when she thought I was just a regular mechanic. And that distinction matters. I told her that I needed someone who respected me for my work ethic, my skills, my character, not for my last name or my family's assets. I needed someone who was proud to introduce me to people as a diesel mechanic because she valued what that represented about who I am as a person. She cried. She said she wanted to be that person, that she could change. But I could see in her eyes that she didn't fully believe it herself. She wanted to want that, but the truth was, her values were too different from mine. We ended it as gently as we could. We divided up the few things we had together. She apologized for the things she'd said at the coffee shop, and I apologized for not being honest with her about my background sooner. There was this moment when she was leaving where she turned back and said, "For what it's worth, I think you're brave. I don't think I could walk ever away from money like you did." I told her I understood that and I didn't judge her for it. Our fears and values just weren't compatible. Since then, I've been processing everything. I took a few days off work, which I never do, and just spent time thinking about what I want going forward. I went back up to the resort midweek and spent time with Michelle and Harold. Harold said something that stuck with me. "Your dad was proud as hell of you for becoming a mechanic. Not because of what you walked away from, but because you found something you loved and got damn good at it. That's what he wanted for you and Michelle, to find your own path and walk it with integrity." I realized I'd been so focused on proving I could make it on my own that I forgot the point was just to live authentically. To build a life I was proud of, regardless of what anyone else thought. And I did that. I'm a good mechanic. I own my own place. I have friends who respect me for my work. I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore, not to Sophie, not to society, not even to myself. As for Sophie, I saw on social media that she's already back out at networking events, posting photos from gallery openings and charity dinners. She looks happy. I think she'll find what she's looking for, someone who fits the image she wants to project. And that's okay. We wanted different things. I'm not ruling out dating again eventually, but right now I'm just focusing on being content with who I am. And honestly, I am. I'm Desmond Chandler, diesel mechanic, co-heir to a resort I'll probably never actively manage, son of a man who taught me that integrity matters more than image. And I'm okay with that. Actually, I'm more than okay. I'm proud of it.